Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram. Our guest today is Yuliya Pankratova. She is the illustrator of No Matter What, a foster care tale. You may recall that we recently had the author of No Matter What, Josh Shipp, on the show. And so I'm really excited to have Yuliya on today. Hey, you also may recall that I've talked about doing educational magic shows here on the podcast, like a lot. You may be annoyed with it. And you might be curious about it. Well, I want to invite you to go to WeWillRoar.com. WeWillRoar.com. We will roar, respect others, and read. That is my totally interactive school assembly that inspires kids to respect every single person they meet, to treat others with the respect that they want people to give to them, and also to make sure that they read every day. Such an important message for kids. And I love the fact that I get to come into schools and, well, I used to get to go into schools. Now, during the era of COVID, school assemblies, they're not happening the same way as they did before. So that's why, with the help of my beautiful wife, I transformed the live stage version of We Will Roar to be totally interactive and a whole lot of fun and a great, effective teaching tool delivered via Zoom. And I'm excited about it because I get to visit classrooms that I've never had a chance to visit before. Classrooms all over the world. And I would love to come to your classroom, or maybe your church group, or your Cub Scout group, or maybe just your home, because you've gathered a great group of your family and friends together for a night of magic and fun and an inspirational message. Well, please go to WeWillRoar.com. Find out about my great show. I'd love to see you smiling at some of my magic tricks. Joining us right now from right outside of London in the United Kingdom, she is the illustrator of a very important book from our friends at Familius. The name of the book is No Matter What, and our guest today is Yuliya Pankratova. Yuliya, welcome to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. I was telling Yuliya before we started recording, we've had Josh Shipp, who is the author of No Matter What, on the show. And that was a very, very powerful conversation. No Matter What deals with the issue of foster care. And you tell me from your perspective as the illustrator. Josh told us as the author and as somebody who lived through the story about No Matter What, but I'm imagining that as an illustrator picking this story up, you had a different perspective. So tell us the story from your perspective, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first saw the manuscript, I first remember feeling immediately touched, actually, because it's a really beautiful and soft story, but with some really truly hard edges, which I think makes it very powerful. The central character goes on a really big journey. At the beginning, he's experienced this horrible displacement, and he moves through the story and actually gets harder and harder, and he toughens up himself, because actually when all these kind of difficult experiences are thrown at him, he ends up mirroring them back, and he gets naughty and he gets difficult, and that's quite empowering, I think, because there's so many stories where where the hero is a bit more 2D, a bit more kind of he's just great and things are happening to him. This character's really 3D, you can really relate, and then actually it's through the power of these elephants who end up basically just having patience. That's the magical thing that they bring. He keeps being naughty, he keeps trying to push them further, he keeps doing silly things, and they just don't mind. They will love him today and they will love him tomorrow. And that's what they keep telling him every night. And it's that really powerful message of that love that will happen no matter what, that actually carries him through. And for me, that was so emotional. For me, someone that, you know, has moved country many times before the age of 10, I think, while I don't know how it would feel to be in foster care, the thing I really empathized with was the feeling of probably of displacement from when you're a kid, you know, having to move around and having to not have something that you really clearly define as home is really difficult. And it kind of, you know, it sends you into yourself, it makes you reflect more, it changes you, actually. And that's very much the story that's going on here.
You know, you said something that was really interesting, and it touched me, and I think it's really important. You were saying that, you know, the central character kind of reacted to this bad situation by acting out and being naughty. And you saw that as a good thing. You know, that this was empowering, that it made this character stronger by standing up and acting out and not just sitting idly by. I think that's important for us to think about, because I think it can help us look at kids who are acting out, whether it's our own kids, somebody in our kids' classroom, or a foster kid, or someone in the foster system, help us see them in a better light. We always look at, you know, the kid who's naughty as the problem child, and he has these issues, and that's too bad. But you know, he really has to you know, straighten up and fly right, as opposed to saying, well, hey, this kid's tough. This kid's going to make it, and so let's invest the time, let's invest the patience as the elephants did, because we know that if we make that investment, it's going to pay off.
Oh gosh, absolutely. I think a really big part of it, and you know, in something else I actually do is I do run unconscious bias training, and actually, weirdly, what you're saying to me really resonates, because there's also the element that something called the fundamental attribution error is actually something where you look at a person and you immediately think that the way they're acting is to do with their own inherent personality and not to do with the circumstances around them. Whereas when you're judging yourself, you always assume that it's to do with circumstances. Oh, you know, you're driving down the road really quickly. Why are you doing that? Oh, actually, you're in a rush. You've got all this pressure on you. But if you see someone else doing it, you immediately go, oh, that person must be horrible. So I guess the power, I think that's what the book actually does really, really well, is it goes, okay, so yes, you've got this kid that's acting out. Think about what might be happening to him. Think about what has actually turned him into that. Is he mirroring back his own experiences? And what then ultimately breaks through it? That's the really powerful lesson here, is what breaks through that kind of acting out ultimately is just unconditional love. And that is what I've heard, you know, even from psychologists, having spoken to them about the book since. That's all you can do to a kid going through such a difficult time, is just love them.
You know, this is, I'm loving that you're saying that. And, you know, we're not talking about sitting back and just accepting, you know, if your kid is being bullied in school, that's bad. That's terrible. But if we can also look at, why is this kid acting in this way? What's going on? Is this kid being bullied at home? Is this kid going through some trauma? And instead of just pointing fingers and putting a label on someone, let's find out what's going on, and let's see how we can help and bring everybody into the place where they feel loved.
Absolutely, exactly.
Yeah. I'm wondering, do you think that your experience as a counselor, affected the way that you illustrated this book?
My experience as a what, sorry?
You said you had some experience counseling and...
Oh, yes. I think that's a really, really interesting point. So I have an experience, looking at unconscious biases. And I actually have been working with underrepresented groups and trying to get them into work. So I guess it's that kind of interest in what makes people tick, what kind of barriers people face, and then how they then internalize them. So again, I think the journey of the main character for me was extremely powerful. And it's, you know, as Josh would have told you, it is autobiographical. And I think that's where the power really comes from. He really kind of, again, he doesn't start off that way. He doesn't start off being difficult and naughty and acting out. That's built, and you see it built, and you go on that journey with him, and it's empathy. I think that's the biggest thing that I also want to take away from it. You build in what is also known as the empathy gap. Quite often, when you see someone in a very different circumstance, it's really hard to cross that gap. And again, there's judgments that are put on that other person. You assume that they're difficult because they are innately so. Here, what Josh has beautifully built in his story is a bridge of that empathy gap. Mm-hmm. You watch how a child like that is formed and how an experience can really, really affect the way that they act day to day. And yeah, for me, at the end, that empathy is so strong and really emotional, actually.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we should, that I try to remember is that when we take the time to show that empathy and to show that love, yeah, it helps that person that we're showing empathy to, but it really makes a difference in our lives too. It really helps enrich our lives.
Oh, absolutely. You become a different person when you can actually step into someone else's shoes, because how easy is it to go around the world being angry all the time at everyone because, you know, you're in the line's too long, the person serving you is taking a long time and being annoying. But actually what happens if you switch the way you look at things and you look at it through an empathetic lens? You go, well, you know, maybe that person has a reason for acting the way they do. Maybe that person in front of me in line that actually grumbled at me, again, maybe they're going through their own thing. And if we start actually looking through like a different lens at the world, a slightly more positive, a slightly more empathetic lens, we honestly start living a better life, a less angry life and a more accepting life.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that really jumps out at me as I'm looking at your illustrations. They are so filled with life and color, and I think empathy. I'm right now looking at this picture of a family of foxes, and it's alive. It's alive with love and family bonding. How long did it take you to learn how to bring your illustrations to life like this?
I guess my whole life, pretty much. You know, it's an absolute lifelong journey, and I will be learning forevermore. But, you know, that's so kind of you to say. And, you know, I'm so thrilled to hear that you are saying that. It's something that, I think kind of grew in terms of style. I think one of the hardest things as an illustrator is finding your style. Mm-hmm. It's the thing, you know, when I was studying was the big panic point for everyone in the class. What's your style? Have you found it? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. You try all this different stuff out. This works. This doesn't work. And you're kind of constantly panicking. And for me, that style, actually I'd say probably came after studying. I was still kind of experimenting throughout that time. And then, you know, I think at a certain point I realized those kind of brush strokes being quite dynamic with the way that I paint, with the way that I kind of move the brush, has been something that I've really loved. And I think, yeah, the natural world I always come back to. Mm-hmm. Something about the kind of the movement of fur. I love fur. I think that's what really, you know, got me with no matter what. That squirrel with his big tail. How wonderful a thing to draw. It's that fur that moves in all directions, that blows with the wind, that, you know, moves as he jumps up and down, leaves, kind of natural growth. I love that stuff.
Now, is there a name for you? As I'm looking, and I'm not educated in the arts, I look at stuff and I like that. I'm not so crazy about that. The canvas with just blue on it, yeah, I don't get that at all. But your style seems to your illustrations are realistic. You know, it's not like over the top cartoony. They're realistic, but there's just this kind of something in it that brings it a sparkle, kind of makes it fantastical, I think, is the word I'm looking for.
Oh, fabulous. Oh, thank you. That's very kind. But yes, I think, again, it's a kind of combination probably of things that I've been exposed to in my life. I think what comes through more than I think sometimes is actually the roots of where I started seeing illustration, which was Russian fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
That's, what I grew up on. And that's a very different style, actually, to the style in this country and actually also similarly quite different to the US. They're very, they were very traditional. They were very beautiful. They were very fine art based, painterly. And I think that's really kind of caught in my mind as something that I, aesthetically put quite high up in my mind. Mm-hmm. So I think I've tried to carry some of that through, like a sense of less the kind of overly simplified cartoon and more, it's still a work of art. Mm-hmm. And it's still, you can see that love labor has gone into it. Sure. And mm-hmm. painting. But as you say, with that little bit of sparkle and a little bit of character where you see it's not just an animal kind of thing. It's an animal imbued with some human qualities because that's, what's happening in this story.
Yeah. I'm curious, how do you most like to work? I imagine like artists, you use all different types of medium. What's your favorite way to create art?
My favourite way is acrylic paint, that's for sure. So, I painted with oil paint when I was kind of younger, again experimenting. And while that's wonderful and beautiful for fine art, it's not the kind of, it smells really bad. And it takes about 2 weeks to dry and it's really, a bit of a pain. But acrylics, I think you get a lot of the sense of a lot of the kind of magic that you'd get through oil paint, and also you can use it in a way that is more similar to watercolor. So it's quite cool. It gives you a lot of flexibility with how you work, dries really quickly, and gives you those dynamic brush strokes I was talking about.
Yeah, I can see the brush strokes, and again, you were talking about you loving fur, and I can definitely see that. It's very, very playful. How would you, if there's a parent out there listening who has an 8 or 9-year-old who really seems to love to create illustrations and draw and whatnot, what kind of how can those parents encourage that creativity in that child?
Oh, that's such an excellent question and something I hugely believe in. I think part of it is doing it together is so much fun, and I think that's very much the way I began. I was lucky enough to have many people in my family who didn't go down the art route necessarily, but definitely dabbled and were interested. So my grandmother sat with me for hours and hours when I was younger, painting, telling me off for painting it wrong, but then also cheering me on. And that was so powerful. So I think, firstly, using it actually as a bonding activity is a really, really special thing. Also, I'd say another thing that for me personally was powerful was the kind of arts and crafts side, which is funny because now I am rubbish at arts and crafts. And my thing is more painting. Cutting, nah. Sticking, nah. But when I was a kid, what I used to do is I collected like what is now in our recycling. I would anytime, someone's drank a bottle of Coke, anytime someone's, used a straw, I would be taking it away and storing it somewhere in the corner. And my gosh, you get so creative with it. I had like a nest of birds that were made out of old bottles. So I think maybe that would be a tip as well, is actually save some stuff you throw away and think what you can do with it, because in a kid's imagination, to you and to my mind almost now even, it's rubbish. To a child, it's quite often better than a really fancy toy you can get in a shop.
Mm-hmm. I'm smiling right now because and I've never been accused of being an artist visual artist in any way. But there's one time in my life that my art received an award. And it was this challenge to take some old wood and recycle it and create a piece of art. And wow. me and my buddy found some different pieces of wood, and we thought we could do something that was a little bit naughty and might get us in trouble, and instead it got us an award. So it was...
Wow! That sounds amazing.
It was very surprising, yes. And that's when I tapped out. I said, well, I just won an award. No need for me to create any more art. But
that's it. Reached my peak.
That's
there
it.
and then.
But I love what you said. You know, we here in the Reading with Your Kids podcast, we tell parents, if you want your kids to develop a love of reading, the way to start is to read with your kids. And it's that feeling of the bonding, that feeling of love when you're there together and you're reading the stories and you're talking about them and you're asking kids questions and you're listening to the answers and you're empowering them by letting them know that you think that they're special, that you value their opinion. That's when that love of reading is created. And it just makes total sense that if we want to encourage our kids to be creative, to sit down and be creative with them. In the same way, draw me a picture of an elephant and I'll draw one, and both of our pictures are valid, and I love yours, and it's really an empowering and really a great bonding experience.
Oh gosh, absolutely. And it can be so playful and it can be so silly, and your elephant can be so rubbish, but it doesn't matter because that's what makes it amazing.
Yeah. Tell me, was creating art for No Matter What, was it more challenging than other stories that you've illustrated for, really easier because you had such a connection to it, or was it just another story?
I think it had a little bit of both. It was very, very much in line with what I love drawing, which is kind of partly why hopefully the guys chose me, the lots of fur, the lots of kind of character. What did happen a lot more in it than actually, I would normally naturally draw is, it's very action heavy. There's quite a lot going on. He's kind of on this journey. Without spoiling it too much, there's, trees falling over, there's backgrounds, there's splashes, and that's been really fun to work with because I'm normally quite kind of specific to character, less so kind of the rest of the scene. And I think it's been really a great development for me actually to push myself in that direction as well, is how do you really create that kind of dynamism that's going to get you really kind of excited as you read the story, like, oh, what's going to happen next? And the page turns, like really thinking about page turns in this book and cliffhangers has been great.
That's wonderful. Now, have you you've illustrated a number of books? Have you written your own books?
I have, yes. So I write as well. So I've got my first written one coming out with Familius as well, actually next year in the spring, which is really exciting. So it's about a little chameleon going around and trying to find his own colour. So I also love writing. I actually, prior to illustration, I studied English literature. I love reading. I love stories. It's been something that, again, has, been pretty fundamental to my growing up. And actually, the combining of the two has been a really kind of magical moment for me, I think. It's when it kind of suddenly clicked of, oh yeah, there's no reason why I don't just have to write kind of formal essays about other people's work in theory. Why don't I try it myself? And, it's never that easy to some extent. You kind of think, oh, I'll just give it a go. It's just a kid's book, a few lines, no problem. My first discovery was absolutely not. There's a lot more to it than that. The sparsity of words makes it almost like poetry. You have to be so concise, but you have to be so lyrical and also really drawing kids in. It's an amazing medium. I absolutely love it. And I'm working hard at it, and I'm still kind of, going to classes. Love it. And I absolutely hope to be doing more and more of it. I've been, during lockdown, I've been writing lots. So I've got a few things on the kind of back burner.
Well, I'm really excited, and I'm really excited now because I would love to have you back on as we get closer to the publication date for the Chameleon's True Colors. In the meantime, I know people are going to want to learn more about you and all of your work, so tell folks where they can connect with you online, please.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Yuliya Artist. So it's Yuliya and then RTIST. Yuliya Artist as one word. I also have a website which I think we can provide a link for.
Sure.
Great, awesome. I won't try and scare you with spelling my full name out again like that. I have a website and an Instagram would be the best place.
Awesome. Well, we've been speaking to the illustrator of the powerful new book from our friends at Familius, No Matter What, Yuliya Pankratova. Yuliya, I've had such a fun time speaking with you. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me on. It's been really, really brilliant and great to meet you in person, well, over digital person.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Corey Wolf. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Are you the author of a great children's book? Are you an author of a great children's book who's frustrated by the fact that school visits aren't happening right now, like I was talking about at the beginning of the show, that library visits aren't happening right now, that book signings aren't happening? The three ways that authors, the three best ways for authors to promote their books, they're just not available during the era of COVID. Well, we have a program that has helped a lot of authors, not only during this time, but for a number of years. It's called the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Program. Our panel of parents, kids, and teachers, if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. And with that status comes a whole lot of really fantastic tools that you can use to help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. It really is worth your time just to take a look at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click in the Author Services button at the top of the page. You'll find out all the information you need about this great program. You'll also be able to submit an application right there. It's readingwithyourkids.com, Author Services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Yuliya Pankratova. I also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my amazing daughter, Alejandra. She is doing some great things I can't wait to tell you about. I also want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.